Hi guys, this is the second part of the introductory session. As Ripple introduced one of the projects for demonstrating the process of this event, I shall take that project and further explain how we could express our ideas and concepts with diagrams. Now, diagramming is a very important part of the documentation process, and images or videos are way more expressive than just text or long annotations. It conveys your point directly to the viewer and without much of an effort. So we aim to improve these abilities for participants. Also, I would suggest that we could keep this geometry for our final day session, as such output would require a basic knowledge for V-Ray with Rhino. So instead of taking this geometry, I would like to demonstrate and give an introduction to V-Ray uh, as a basic course of understanding the concepts and basics. So as we proceed further in this series, we will be well versed with a basic UI and operation for the V-Ray. So let me show you what I would be working on the second part of this introductory session. Okay guys, so let's jump into V-Ray now. So after you install V-Ray, you have this toolbar over here, which gives you various V-Ray settings and the assets manager which is there. Now this is the V-Ray asset manager. Now when you click this, dialog box will open up, which is like this at first. So it has everything over here from material to lighting to objects, then render channels and the settings for rendering output and the render button and the frame buffer which is there. Now you have two arrows on your left and on right. You can click on these two ones to expand further. So it will give you all the settings which is there. So on your left you have the create and the pre-defined materials which come along with V-Ray. So in your create tab you can start creating various types of materials, and the lights and the objects, and you have the render channels over here. So similarly what you can do is at the bottom you can see there are many icons which are there. So coming over here, this create asset, you can click over here, you go to materials and you can create a generic material which is there. So if you see, our new generic material has been created, and on your right there will be a preview of the material which is there and various settings which you can tweak. Let's say this is the color right now. If you click on this, you get a color picker, so you can change it to, let's say, red or some shade of blue, and it will automatically update in your preview over here. So this is pretty much the basic UI, that you have your materials and create on your left. You have all the things that are there on the main bar. So if you click over here, this will show you the material library which is there. So in your current scene, what materials are there, and if you click on the light tab, it will show you the lights that are there in the model or the file. And from this tab you can create some proxy mesh, the for etc. And similarly, if you go to the settings tab over here, you can select your render engine. Do you want it CPU, GPU, or both of them combined? There are different settings. Similarly, like camera settings, which you can tweak. The render output, what resolution you want as a final render. Then saving the image, what file path do you want, where exactly in your computer do you want to save the image. And for the more set the middle frame contains all your main settings, and to further iterate or tweak these settings, you have your right side bar which is over here. So let's go to a material again, which is here. So this is pretty much the basic UI which you need to know, like how the elements are placed in the V-Ray asset editor. Now if you go to materials, which is over here, and if you click on this expand folder, You get all sorts of different types of materials which are inbuilt. So these are provided by the V-Ray group itself. So what you can do is, if you go to brick, then you have all these different options of bricks which is there. And if you go to similarly car paint, it has this nice shine which is there because of the glossiness and the reflection of the light which shows this kind of glossiness which is there on the car paint. Then similarly concrete, diagrammatic, glass, liquid, and various types of these materials will come to it. You can similarly mimic water waves, etc., or some very liquidy effect which is there. So let's try out the lights which are there in the scene. So we'll go over our model space. We don't need any of the information right now, so we'll hide the text and the information. We go to the perspective. Also we can, let's say we create a V-Ray reference layer. We'll turn off the solid geometry and for now. So in the V-Ray reference, we'll quickly create a cube and let's test out different lighting conditions and materials. So if we again go to the V-Ray manager, so now how you can apply the materials are various ways. So this is a material which is created, right? So you can also double click and rename the material. Let's say this could be blue, for example, or whatever like you want to say it. Now one is that you can select this material, select this geometry, go to the asset manager and right click on the material and head over to apply to selection. So now if you go to the rendered viewport also, you can see that the blue material has been applied over this. Now another way is you can apply to whole layer if you want. So apply to layer and you can go at V-Ray reference. So now if I even create more geometries and go to my render, automatically the layer has this material applied. So no matter how many geometries are there, this material will come default on the layers. So again we'll go here, and now and similarly if you have, let's say, hundreds of materials which have been applied to all the models over here, now you want to select some of the models which contain this material, which have this material applied. So what you can do, right click, select object and scene. So this will select this in the Rhino viewport. Select these two. Now let's head over to lights and let's just see how many kind of lights are there. So from this there's a tab of lights over here in orange color. So if you expand this, there are different kinds of lights available. Similarly, you can access from this light source by right clicking it in the asset manager, your various lights from rectangle, sphere, spotlight, IES, omni, dome and mesh light. So let's say we'll try some of them. So this is a rectangle light tool. We'll click. All we need to do is make one rectangle, and you see that it naturally has the lighting arrow pointed upwards as the lighting direction. So what we need to do is simply rotate it by 180 degree, and let's say we can place something like this over here. Also for now we can create one plane as a surface for below. So now if you go to asset manager, you'll see a rectangle light which is there. So this is the intensity which is there and the color of the light. So this right toolbar gives you additional settings for the rectangle light to be tweaked. So now you can lower or higher the intensity. You can change the color also, and you have further options below which says if you want the light invisible. If I click this, my source is invisible, but the amount of light projected is the same. Do you want shadows or not? So similarly, it will affect the rendered output. So let's quickly see how this behaves, the kind of light which is here. So let's hit the render button. Yep. So if you see that with the rectangle tool or area light, it's kind of projecting the lights in a very in a manner with some of the hard shadows which are falling over here, and then simply diffusing with soft shadows at the end. Now if you want to change this lighting or tweak it, you can see the profile, it's a rectangle, and thus it falls in that same amount of profile. Let's say we bring it down and increase the intensity to 40. Let's say then how it reacts. So now if you see, you can make note of the difference which is there. So this was one. Then we have different, let's say this is a sphere light tool which is there. So you click, you specify the amount of radius or how big you want. Then again, if you render, so it's this. So you can instantly notice the difference of the amount of light projection which is there due to the different profiles of this light and how they behave. And this again, the source of light was visible, thus you can see the lighting source. If you again go in the options and hit invisible, then this won't be visible. So I just prepared some, I'll show you. And then one of the very important or widely used as of now is this dome light which is there. So what it does is you need to specify a point. Now it will instantly open a file path menu. So in this you need to select the source which is there, and this takes the HDRI lights which are there. So I'll be talking about that, why it's one of the most widely used and most important as of now, how to why people use those lights. So certain HDRI maps over here. I'll just put one right now. So I've put this over here. Okay. Now let's hit render and see the quality or the difference that it makes. You can instantly see that it kind of gives you a very more natural lighting environment which is there, and a natural look to the model itself. The shadows are very sharp and clean. So what happens is that this HDRI lighting is a kind of very different kind of mapping the whole environment with very specialized focus, the focus length, the lens which is used, and very appropriate timing. So I'll show you some of the one of the websites which has a very large collection of HDRI maps which are there. It is known by Hdri Heaven. You can go over there and you have free maps to download. So this is the one. You can also support it by donating some amount. So if you go to HDRIs, you have all of these different kind of maps which have been captured by the people and contributed together and put out on the site. Just loading, yeah. So from various different environments, they capture the light source and and it kind of projects the more likely of that specific environment and how it would behave. So I've downloaded 2-3 different kind of. So if you again go to the asset manager, you will again have this dome light over here. It will show the texture. Yeah, preview. So if you again go over here in this texture slot, here is the file path which was earlier popped up when we placed the dome light. So this one has a very rocky or deserted map which is there. That's why if you saw the result, it was very sharp shadows which came due to the high peak or the sun being on the head and more light being captured. Now if let's say I change it, I've downloaded three. One is of the desert, one is the night, and one was the overcast. Overcast will give very soft shadows. So if you see, this is the night one. So again you have the option over here in going invisible. So and you can set the intensities from here. Let's hit render and see the difference. So again in night, if you see, it's already dull at the moment and the shadows are much very much pale or not so stark as the ones in the desert. Now we'll try some soft shadows also with the overcast map. Let's see how this behaves. If you see, instantly the shadows are very smooth and not at all kind of popping out. Also you can increase the intensity. So let's say we can make this 4. Again hit the render. So now if you see the very soft shadows which are there. So I made some, I'll just show you. So this was the area light which we talked about. Then this was the sphere one. This is a spotlight which is there. So it kind of focuses only on the area which you want. Then this was again the Hdri lighting. So this one was a desert, the very stark shadows. This one was the night, and this one was the overcast. So now if you want to make a very diagrammatic feel, you can take some very strong light source and the sharper shadows. So you'll go and again choose the desert one, which is you can change the intensity to 1. So now let's make this a white colored material, which can be for the models or everything, let's say, except what we want to highlight. This can be everything on the model. And let's turn on a solid geometry on the roof. So here we have. So now to quickly create a good render, what we can do is we can apply the white colored material to all the surrounding or the context except the roofing members and the columns, let's say. And over there we can apply a wooden texture, a wooden material. So it can again go to the asset manager. We can go to the materials, the pre-existing ones, go down to wooden laminates. So these are the ones which exist. Let's say we want to take this one. So click and drag it over here, or you can double click it. So this comes. What you can do is again, since I've sorted the roofs and columns into different layers, I can apply them directly to my layers. So I can go to my roof and apply it. or I can also select my members. And I can apply it. So now I can also take this all of these interior spaces as well. And apply the laminate material. Now what we can do interestingly is that there's in the settings, if you go, there's one material override tab which is there. So it's generally off. You need to turn this on. Now what this does is it applies one material to all the objects which are there. So you can select the material which is there as everything, the white one which you created. And now in the laminate one, what you can do is turn off this overridden, uncheck this. So let's first see the result with this checked on, how it is. So let's say we'll set a view and let's hit render. So with the material override checked on, it applies that white material to all the things over here, right? So if we uncheck this can be overridden, let's see the result. So instantly see that the ones over which we applied the wooden material doesn't get overridden because you have unchecked this over here. Also in this you can't see the edges, or edges aren't defined very well. So how can we create that diagrammatic look? So if you come under this diagrammatic tab which is there is one material known as toon. So what the toon essentially does is that it will take the material and apply a fine outline over it. So toon always takes a base material which is there. So in this case we have this one, the blue. We can delete this and specify the base material as everything. We can change the color of the line to black, and the line width can be 1 pixel. If you go to settings, again choose toon as the overriding material. Now let's see the result. You start seeing this edge being defined by the toon material instantly. Now this gives a much more diagrammatic feel, and kind of you can differentiate what's going on. You can similarly apply the toon effect on this material also. So what you can do is again go to this material, create a toon material. Now this you can say the wood toon, and you can rename this as wood base, and you can select base material as wood base. You can rename this as everything toon, and this is everything base. So it's important to rename your materials, because as and when the file gets bigger and bigger and you have more materials coming in, you'll kind of fill up a whole list with various materials which are there. and you wouldn't be able to differentiate it very quickly. So it's a better habit to name these every time. So again, now you see your wood base is this and your wood tone is this. So yeah, you can form this nice outline with this. You can also change the color of the lines, yeah, and the thickness. So now again, we need to uncheck this, and let's see the result. It's a bit unclear if. Oh, okay, okay. So one mistake what we did is we didn't apply the wood tone over here. So what we need to do is we select all the objects, select objects in scene. So here we have selected all. You go to wood tone and simply apply to selection. Now since it's applied, just click render and you can see or notice the difference right now. Right now I'm just rendering in a very small resolution so that we can get the result immediately and we can see it. Yep, now if you see it's applied the black outline to the wooden material also. So you can start noticing the difference. The roof members and this. So now let's say we want to create a base grid also to highlight this model furthermore. So what you can do is create one base planar surface. You can again select that and scale it up. Let's say we want this much. You can create a custom grid over here so that it kind of makes the model more impactful. So again you can go to your materials, go to diagrammatic tab, and there's this grid which is there, the grid 02. So you can bring this in your materials list. It might take few seconds to upload the preview. The grid has this kind of pattern as of now. So if you apply this, if you see over here this preview which is there, so apply this over here right now and uncheck this. Let's see. So you're seeing right the grid which is there, it's very off scale. How can reduce that and tweak that? Also you can pull this down very slightly as it kind of was colliding with the base plane which was there. So now this is a grid to material. We have two things, grid, the grid sub D1 and grid sub D2. Now what this does is that the color line which is there, the color fill which is there. So we kind of change this. This kind of gets changes. You can make this also a bit darker, the color fill. Now this grid is a major one which kind of divides the into four segments, the smaller grids, and this is the base grid which is there. So let's say we'll make this as color line as white and color fill can be black. with this also you can make it white, right? You can also start by changing its width, both of these. But first what we can do is, as seen previously how to apply texture maps, what you can do is select this, go to its properties, texture mapping. You can apply a box mapping. You can select bounding box, C plane, you can cap it, and then go to show mapping. So this is the mapping which is there, right? You can select the mapping widget. You can just scale it down, and now just hit render and check. Yep, so now if you see, there's an instantly difference when you scale that mapping widget down. The grid itself got much smaller in size, but still this thickness is quite it's very thick in comparison to the model. So let's make it much more finer. So one is, you can increase this bit more, because if you see, this was too much of the subdivision, so you can increase the mapping widget a bit more. You can come over here, you can decrease the size of this to 0.01 and the further base grid to 0.005. Now let's see how it looks. Yep, this looks much better than the previous one. So if you see, you can further control the size with these U and V line widths which are there. And now, so also what you can see in this is that the shadow is coming over this plane. Let's say we want to invert that. So what you can do is go to this light over here, and just rotate it by 180 degree. But it won't change it right away, because this use transform which is there is generally checked off. So what you have to do is check it on under the light and dome light, use transform, and then if you'll render, so if you see, now the shadows are coming over here, and this looks much better. You can make the grid a bit more smaller. Also, let's explore the settings over here which are there. So in the render settings, this is the quality which is there. How fine do you want your render? So generally, it's medium is good enough. If you want very detailed one, unless you want to show some very clear zoom in details or something, you have to go high or very high. So it just denoises it further. So if you see the noise limit which is here, it's a 0.05 in medium. If you further go to high, it becomes 0.01, and if you go to very high, it becomes 0.005. So medium is good enough. You can click the denoiser on. These are the camera settings which are there. So standard or even panorama or cube map. We won't dive into further or very detailed steps into this, because this session is for showing how to make set diagrams and a very quick intro into VRAM. You can further play with the exposure value. You can decrease it to 10 to make the renders more brighter. So now again, if you see, this will turn out for the more bright. See, so you can play with the exposure values how you want it. Generally 10 to 11 is good enough. Fairly, you can also decrease the intensity to 0.75, and you have to make sure your Rhino sun is off. Then you have this render output which is there. So this is the image width, the height, the resolution that you want. So you can also create 1920 by 1080, or you can select the aspect ratio which is there, 1:1, 4:3, or custom one if you want a custom resolution. And you can click the save frame on also. So what that does is it instantly gives you the borders. So the outer one is the one which will capture like the main render output which will be there, and the inner one gives you the margin if you're looking at some very particular angle and don't want anything outside the margin or something outside this margin. So if you see, if I change my aspect ratio 1:1, my this frame also changes. So I'll go with 16:9 for now. And there's this environment which is there. So when you're using the dome lights or something, you don't want any environment, the background environment which is there. So you can uncheck this, and on the right you have this different render parameters which are there. So this is the noise control level which we saw in the medium at 0.05, and you can change it accordingly. These are some more advanced settings which we won't dive into. So now if you render, and also make sure to select a good view. Let's say we'll select something like this. Also, if you want our roof to be exploded or something, that depends on you how you want it. And now you can save this in the named viewports as V-Ray diagram, and now you can render this accordingly. So if you see, you are getting a very nice and a clean look and a very diagrammatic look for this one. Also, if you don't want to see these lines which are coming under the roof surface, right now the surface of the roof is exactly adjacent to these roofing members which are there. So you can either just offset this or hide the underneath layer. So we'll just do that. So we go to turn these off. Yeah, you can turn this off, and listen, now hit render. Now you'll have a clean look on this surface which is there. I'll also explain you the use of render channels now. So if you go over here, this tab, the layers stacked above one another, you'll see there are different channels which are there, right? So let's say if you click on material ID color, what this essentially does is adds various kinds of channels to your renders. So let's say I added material ID color. We'll get onto those. I'll just show I add Z depth. I'll add render ID also. So now if you go over here, you can see in this description what is there. So in the material ID it says creates a mask based on the material ID color parameter. So let's just quickly try to render and see. And from this about drop down menu you can access those. So these which are there. So if you go to alpha, what alpha does is that it makes a black and white sequence for the whole render output. Right now since it's rendering, it will be in progress layer. So whatever the model is there, it will convert that into white space and the rest into black. Then material ID similarly. So what material ID does is gives a shade to all the material that have been applied differently onto the models. So if we have applied the grid material on this base, there's this everything white tone which we applied to all the rest of the model, and the custom wood laminate. So this will have the same shade which is there. So how is this helpful, or why do I need this? So, and also in the Z depth, if you see the different lighter and darker shades which are there of gray. So what this does is gives you shades based on the camera and level of the objects with respect to camera. So if this base is closer to my camera, it will give a darker shade, and as the object goes further and further, it lightens up the shade. So why do we need this, or how does this matter? It's because when we go to post production, when you translate these images into Photoshop, so these come very handy for selection and making the render further enhance it up in some sense. So let's just wait to finish this render and then we'll dive into Photoshop and see how we can further enhance this with the render channels and other settings. Okay, so now we see the render is finished. We have a render over here. Also these lines are quite not evident, so there are two ways which we can go about it. We'll see them. Now if we see, this is our final which is there. Also we have our material ID which is there, the render ID. What render ID does is applies separate colors to all of the objects which are there in the model. So that is the, so what we'll do is we will quickly save this. So you can select this and save all the channels to separate files, all channels into single file, or save current channel. We'll quickly save current because we just want 3 of them. So we'll just go to our folder and we'll save it over here as our public square render. We'll take the material ID color and we'll take render ID. That's it for now. Also what we can do is go to our pen mode and we can capture this, or what we can do is we'll take a quick make 2D of this. So have to good line weights while we transfer this into Illustrator, the render. So we can do is make 2D. We don't want hidden lines in this, so we'll just layer name will be V-Ray render. You can hit OK and the process for make 2D starts over here. If you go to your top view, this is your make 2D file, the result which is there. Oh, we selected this also by mistake. So we'll just export this into an Illustrator file. Now let's save. Yeah, this is good. We'll just save our file and close this. Now we can open our renders in Photoshop. So here is our render, the base render. Now since it doesn't save the background, it comes with the zero background. So what you can do is I'll add a solid color as white for the background layer. Now what you can do is simply drop these channels over here, hit enter. Now this is a pretty clean result. But let's say you want to highlight the playground which is in the foreground over here. What you can do is go to your material ID or go to your render ID with the magic wand. Just select this. So this is where this becomes very helpful, these render channels. So now if we go to creating a new layer and hit shift F5, you'll get the fill option. You can go select pattern, and I've loaded custom patterns over here. I can provide you the file pattern, the .pat file. You can also load this in your Photoshop. So let's say we'll just take this one, and okay, so you instantly see this hatch comes only on the foreground area. So let's say we want to fill it with some other pattern. So this as per our choice, how do you want to fill it? We can hit OK. You see this instantly is a good effect. You can start naming your layers. This will be our base render, and you can group these into render channels. So now we can make another new layer for adding some people and some trees. So let's say this will be our humans. We'll also go and see the brush settings, how we can modify those. So this is humans. So we can adjust the size accordingly. Let's say this much should be good enough. Something like this. You can also decrease the opacity to 50 or more or less, as you don't want the hatch to be highlighted. You just want it there for fill. So this is the human. Maybe you don't want to place it something like this. There are a few settings in the brush settings which will look. So what you can do is go over here to the brush settings. Now here you can see, if you increase the spacing, you will see that these are something like this. So now if I will click and drag, you can see this pattern being formed. You can also click shape dynamics. You can start to jitter it and change the size also. And you can hit scattering, which is there. So what it does, it scatters the humans. So yeah, so now it's scattering on. Let's see how something like this we have, right? So you can further make this a bit more, till 1000 only. So you can have more dense also if you want. So this, if you increase in shape dynamic size jitter, you can have different sizes. We don't want that as of now. You can have different angles also. Angles so we don't want, because they're human, so we want it pretty much straightforward only. So now over here you can like start placing them, click and drag for placing multiple. Similarly you can do with different kinds of humans. Now you can reduce the size and again go into brush settings, go to brush tip shape and increase the spacing. You can increase the scattering if you want. So again something like this you can play with. So with this you can play with different types of brush settings. If you want to fill an environment naturally or looking more organic, and then you just have your trees which are there and you can start placing them. So you can create a new layer for that known as trees and just start placing those. You can select different types of the trees, and as per your model and file you can just place them around and play with them. So you can place some away, or you can decrease the opacity also. You can start placing them, something like this. And this one's looking to you can erase this one. So this way you can just start to insert some vegetations, etc. Something like this, and more smaller ones over here. So let's say we have something like this which is there. Also you can change the background color by hitting this solid over here, and then you can choose some, let's say this orange style or something like this, if you would like to, or if you would want. We'll keep it white font. And you should always go for a non-destructive method or workflow. So let's say if you want to make this a gradient, so you shouldn't just hit take the gradient tool. Let's say we have this in a new layer. Okay, I'll just pick this color, apply it. You shouldn't take a gradient and then just push it from here to here if you want. What you can do instead, if you want to gradient in this, you can create a mask, layer mask, which is there, and now you can, if you hit a gradient with the layer mask, you'll see that it naturally erases it from the layer itself. But it's a non-destructive workflow, which means you can always edit this. So you can again create a gradient from here to here, so it will edit that. It will not destruct or make changes in this layer itself. So I'll just delete this. We don't want this as of now. We'll turn this into white again. We'll save our PSD file over here. Let's say yep. Also, I'd like to give you a small tip or advice which is there. So let's say if you have a very complex model and you start, let's say, selecting it with the lasso tool or something like that, right? Let's say this, and by mistake you kind of hit escape, or the selection goes away, and you have to reselect all of that again. What you can do is, whenever you're selecting something like this, let's say, what you can go is and select on the top and save selection. And now you can name this as example. Let's say hit OK. Now even if this gets deleted, I can go select, load selection, and what I can do is, oh, just a second, we'll go similarly in my load selection and hit yeah, the channel will be example, and I hit OK. So again, this is my selection which comes back to me. So this is a quick tip if you want, or you can use this in your future files. Now let's go to Illustrator and we'll see how to live link Illustrator and Photoshop. We'll quickly open our Illustrator. So this is our make 2D which was there. We'll create a new document similar of the 1920 by 1080. Yup, let's go ahead with this. So this is our canvas. Now what we need to do is hit file and place, or you can hit Ctrl Shift and P. Now we'll just place our Photoshop document which is there. In PSD you can just put this. You see, this is a Photoshop document which we were preparing right now. We can rename this layer as PSD. You can create new layer. You can just lock this one. You can select all of this content and check on paste remembered layers. So when you paste this over here, it kind of remembers these layers which are there. Now we can just scale this up. And we'll quickly match this. We don't need this as of now. We'll quickly size this according to a model. Yes, so there it is. So we can quickly get rid of the unwanted lines. So now we can adjust the line weights, or so we can select our visible curves. It's 1 point as of now. We can reduce it to 0.5 also. Now this looks pretty good with the neat outlines which are there. So now we have linked the PSD file over here, right? So let's say we want to edit something, or we don't want to constantly again edit, save it as JPEG and insert in Illustrator and some. So since we have linked, let's see if we make changes to our background to something like this orangish shade, and simply we hit Ctrl S for save. When we go to Illustrator, there will be a dialog box which pops up. It says some files are missing or modified. Would you like to update them? So if you hit yes, instantly your color has changed. So this is a very good way, an efficient way in which you can work simultaneously between Photoshop and Illustrator, and you don't need to constantly save this as an output or final form, then again bring it to Illustrator, do some change, and again if you have some changes in the original one, you repeat the whole process. So this is a very time saving and efficient method which is there. So again, if we, let's say, go to Photoshop, change again this background to white. What you can also do is add some shadow or a backdrop, or any if you want. Let's say you want to create a pattern at the background. So you take this, you can create a dotted pattern which is there. Let's say, so you've got your this over here. Now all the vector work which you have, you can start doing, or you can start annotating something, but make sure your all layers are managed, and you create a new layer for annotation and start to work. If you want to describe this, also you can put some arrows over here. You can go to stroke, arrowheads, and then you can apply some arrow. So if you see, but it's too small, you can change the arrow sizes also. Again, going in stroke, scale this as 300%. So now if you see, you can add some text. You can add a box also if you have a backdrop at the in the background. So you can arrange this and send to back, and you can select your text and convert it to white. So now if you see, this clearly looks very nice and a presentable technique, and you've got crisp shadows and materials with V-Ray. And in V-Ray also there wasn't any effort which we put, just some basic materials and some tweaking in the render settings, and quickly bringing it into Photoshop for adjustments like putting people, trees, etc. And you can modify this a lot, and then we just bring live link it to Illustrator and add some vector works like these line works, and add some annotation like describing something, adding some text and arrows. So this is one way to present your models in a very quick diagrammatic way and with certain materials also. I want to highlight certain things. Okay guys, so in the upcoming webinar sessions, starting from this Monday 25th May, we will be diving into furthermore presentation techniques and post-processing them quickly for creating a visually appealing image for any design project. So if you would like to join us, the link is provided in the description below. So do register yourself and join as soon as possible because there might be some trouble letting you into the Facebook private groups where the sessions will be conducted. So see you guys next week for the extended sessions.